there's a few things in life that because they make us uncomfortable, usually we don't like them, because they take us out of our comfort zone. They don't feel good. We don't understand them a lot of times, which make us just despise them by nature. But I think the more the more I live life, the more I see people have conversations and just listen to to wise people who talk about their lives and like the experience that they've gone through. It's interesting how a lot of those things that we naturally want to do our best to avoid or like stay away from actually end up contributing like in major roles in some cases to who they become, to what they achieve, to how they become so successful in different layers, in different ways, and to how they're able to live the life that they live. And so that's one of the reasons why I feel like, pain is one of, on that list of things, like pain is definitely up there, on the top. And I really just want to have a conversation on it because in a lot of those people, even in my life, you do realize that pain pops up at different times, pops up a lot in different times. And every single time it ends up, depending on how you interact with it, it ends up becoming something very pivotal in the person that you become.
Like in a good or bad way.
In a good or bad way. And so because of that, I think, so that's one of the big reasons, I guess, why I wanted to talk about pain and just, kind of like see where it takes us as we talk about it. But also to see if we can find, I guess, healthier ways to look at it.
Right.
Because since it's a part of life and almost unavoidable, no matter what you do, maybe try to see how they actually are small gifts and even hidden treasures in the little bits of experiences that we get to have with pain, So so that's kind of thought. So I guess from the get go, let's talk a little bit about what you feel like is the general, and it can be based on you specifically or just what you observe. Okay. But what do you feel like is the general relationship that we mentally develop with pain as far as like how we interact with it?
Well, it's interesting because I think it really depends, like you said, like just how people interact and kind of like answering that question. I have a question which we can get to after.
Okay.
Which is pain, is like our avoidance of pain, is it taught or is it like innate? Like that's kind of something. But like, what is a way, that how we deal with it? Well, I think that, if it's pain from things that embarrass you, that's more of something that's avoidant pain. But I also, I immediately kind of thought of self-inflicting pain, which is things that people do all the time, right? So when people are hurting themselves through self-destructive behavior, bad habits, not taking care of themselves, toxic relationships, it's weird because you're doing something that's actively hurting you, but it's as opposed to, I guess the benefit of being in pain outweighs the cost of getting out of the pain.
Oh, wow.
Which is why I see people stuck in long-term bad relationships or people that have bad eating habits or leisure activities, like people that smoke and stuff, or it's like, well, it's not good for you at all. It's like, even drinking's not good for you, and they say like everything in moderation, but like pain, I would say, okay, like emotional pain of if you're in a bad relationship, like how do people get out of it? Well, I think if you have the right support system, you can deal with it. But I think if you're not okay or you're not centered with yourself, it's almost like that's a byproduct. So this pain is a message to tell you, like, hey, there's something that you need to address, that you actually need to change, because your action continues to cause this outcome. It's like if you put your hand on a hot stove, well, you're going to get burned 100% of the time. Even if you coat and layer your hand, if you keep it there, eventually after long, you're still going to burn your hand. So I think people's response and reacting to pain is that they need to learn to identify, like, okay, this is actually, it's my body, it's my emotions, it's my mind telling me, like, there's this problem that I need to address, and how can I get out of it?
I think you raised a really good point in the pain conversation, which is the types of pain, and not even necessarily from the standpoint of like physical, emotional, spiritual, any of that, but even from the point of the actual the actual components of the pain itself. Because one of the things that came to mind as you were talking, I was thinking of the pain of giving birth, for example.
Oh, sure, okay.
And every single time that, obviously I have no experience with what actually feels like, but every time that I've heard anything remotely that tries to compare that to something that a man would experience, it just sounds like I would die experiencing that pain. Like they literally, I saw, I don't know if it was an article or a study that was talking about the fact that the amount of pain receptors that we have in our bodies, like the amount that is triggered during the birth process, the only way for a man to experience that level, like, would be to have like an extremely, possibly near death experience that would trigger that amount of pain. So like that's it. But on the other side of that pain is something amazing, literally the miracle of creating life. You know what I mean? And so, or like even the pain of working out, that it's painful, it's hard, it hurts, but on the other side of that, there's a healthier body, a stronger body, and all that. And then there's all the pains that lead you down negative path, whether it's addictions or like hurting yourself and things like that. So so I think in that light, when we do talk about pain, we should, I don't even know how to put it, but we should identify almost the consequences that come to that pain, instead of looking at the pain specifically. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So instead of looking at the pain and saying, oh, I'm feeling pain, I don't want this.
Right.
I think the conversation should be, what is on the other, like what is the consequence that comes attached to this pain? For example, if it's the stove thing and you feel the pain, the thought should be, okay, what is on the other side of it? We'll be getting burned. So I probably should avoid this pain.
Yeah.
But in the case of the gym, when you feel that pain the next morning and you're sore, the conversation should be, okay, what is on the other side of this pain? And if it's a healthy body, and then it's a pain that's worth going through. And so I think maybe that's where a conversation should start, as far as when we look at pain, instead of just stopping at the fact that it's painful, training our bodies every time we feel pain to look beyond it and to see what is attached with it. Because a pain doesn't exist by itself. Pain has to be caused by something. Whether it's emotionally, whether it's physically, something has to cause the pain.
Right.
And so I feel like the question has to become, is the thing causing this pain worth continuing to go through the pain or not?
Okay.
And so having establishing that, I guess I want to ask you, what are some, not ground rules necessarily, but what are some factors you think that should make the cause of a pain worth continuing to go through that pain?
Okay, sure. So I think like it's important to establish that there are good types of pain, or there are good reasons for having pain. Childbirth, getting stronger at the gym, changing toxic negative behaviors that you'll have, like maybe that mental pain of, but some ground rules for being able to deal with it, and looking at it. Well, definitely what you said. What are you getting out of it? What is the byproduct of the pain? Because is it pain because you're going through a process to make yourself a better person, or because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, pain is the result? Is pain a catalyst for a change, or is pain the result of the behavior? And then it becomes looking beyond. It's like, okay, I'm in this pain. Why? Well, is it because it's launching you forward, and it's like, I'm working out, I'm sore all the time, but now I'm stronger, I can run faster, I can do more stuff, I feel better about myself. And you look at what it's doing, or it's, I'm sitting down all the time, watching TV all the time, I'm eating junk food all the time, I'm in all this pain, and I don't have anything that I've gained from it other than I just continue to feel miserable. So you have to look at, where is it taking you?
I like that.
And then you have to look and realize that, yeah, it's a product. I mean, we have growing pains as kids. You grow in order for your body to mature. You have to go through changes. Your bones and everything literally growing. Your body's growing, and that creates discomfort and pain. But there's a reason for it. It's like, I'm sure pregnancy pain. So this would be an interesting one if we had somebody here that was actually pregnant and had kids to talk to about. But you got to look at pain as it's like a step into the next phase, or it's like it's a transitionary period.
And that's when it becomes a little healthier than if it's just like
I think so, because if it's just an end result, well, then you got to look at what you were doing, because we're talking about looking at, okay, what can you look at beyond the pain, to like what can you gain from it. But if there's nothing you could gain, well, then now like pain is this middle ground. There's nothing in the future that'll benefit you from it. Now you need to look in the past. What's caused the pain? At that point, then you got to turn around and look back. And what are some of the things which you would say that normally cause people pain that they could identify?
I will say, well, I'm again, I guess the deeper part, because obviously physical pain, I think it's very easy to identify, but I'm going to talk a little bit maybe about emotional pain, because I think that's something that is very prominent, but we don't necessarily know as well how to deal with it. And on that like established ground, I think one of the big things, not number one necessarily, I don't know what the statistics are, but I think one of the very big things that cause people pain is first of all, bad relationships, like the influence of bad people in their lives, and the wrong inputs as well into their mind. So the things they listen to, the things they watch. Because when it comes to emotional pain, and the reason why those two are on top for my list is because unless someone either says something or like does something that impresses emotional pain on you, you are the only person who can cause yourself emotional pain outside of someone else. You know what I mean? And so then if you have healthy people around you, if you have people that support you, that pour love into you, that encourage you to move towards your goals, that are not negative, that are not pulling you down, naturally it will be a lot harder for you to be emotionally hurt by those people. Then it becomes up to you. Like, what are you constantly watching? What are you constantly seeing? What are you constantly listening to? Because then you basically have those tools in your hand to hurt yourself or to not hurt yourself. And then the healthiest I mean that you can be when it comes to emotionally and distancing yourself from pain is to both be in a wonderful community surrounded by people like who are very good influence, and also creating a very healthy mental state by the things that you feed yourself. I think that's like peak. And in that place, or the closer I guess you get to it, I feel like the more you can avoid pain. And again, this is emotionally, because the thing is, emotionally, like again, physically it's very easy, I feel like, to experience like pain. This pain helps you for this, but emotionally I feel like it's harder, you know, to think of having to go through pain. And so, but the other thing, or the one thing that I can think of that you could benefit from an emotional pain, is a lesson learned.
Of course.
And I think so, because I don't want it to make it sound like if you're going through emotional pain, game over, there's nothing left for you type thing, you know. But if you are someone who's struggling with some kind of emotional pain, whether it's because of the people around you or the things that you have allowed to input, then you're gonna have to look. And it's hard, it's difficult, but you're going to have to try to find a lesson that you can pull from it and work on those steps, you know, like work on getting people that are healthy around you, that can help you be healthier, and changing, you know, like what goes into this. Because when it comes to the emotional pain, like it's here, and the feeling of the people, and here because of what you feel yourself. So I'll say for me, those will be some of the two that cause a lot of emotional pain. So I have another question for you too. So what do you feel like is an experience, you know, either that you've personally dealt with, or that you know of someone that has dealt with, in which pain happened, or pain was caused, whether it's because of something the person did or happened to them, but in which the pain was able to, whether it's a lesson on the other side, or it's like an actual like accomplishment on the other side, kind of have been talking. What is kind of like a practical or tangible story or example that you can think of in which there is that sense of going through the pain towards something else instead of getting stuck there?
Okay, well, I think a good example that kind of went off the top of my mind here is that there are times where I've had relationships where, because you had mentioned something earlier where like if you're in that good community that you have, you know, you shouldn't be emotionally hurt and stuff. And I was thinking like you have less likelihood, I would say, of being exposed to emotional pain when you're around people that are, you know, supposed to support you and lift you up, right? But when you have those friendships or relationships where those people fail, I think it then makes you more susceptible to a greater magnitude of pain. So that's my example, is having a friendship where the individual we're no longer friends, but it was my expectation dependent that they were this person that was supporting me, that I can lean on and can count on. And then when things went wrong, then all of a sudden they're gone, and it created that emotional pain. Or it's like, okay, how could you have caused this to me? Because I would have expected much more from you. I would have thought that you couldn't hurt me this way. But what I learned from it is that even the people that you care about most, or people that are close to you at some point in your life, they're very capable of still causing you pain. So you have to be aware of, like you said, we're, aside from what other people do, we're the only ones who cause ourselves emotional pain. You have to know that it's not always on you what they cause for themselves. Now you can be around someone who's self-destructive, and that's what they are, because that's where they're stuck in life, and no amount of your help or effort will get them out of it. Because for him, it was a long time friend of mine, and he just kept screwing himself over and over and over again, and me being around him, just like, okay, I'm just getting hurt being associated with you, so I have to step back. Because all I'm getting exposed to is pain. There's nothing I can do to help you. There's nothing that I can do. Like, the level beyond, what I could do was what he needed professional help, right? And I think that that's an important thing that we need to distinguish, is that sometimes other people's pain, because I like to solve problems, I like to fix things, I like to save the day, I like to do things for other people, I like it when I have the opportunity to make people feel good, right? But then sometimes I feel that I'll get drawn to, or like when people have more of emotional problems, I'll feel very empathetic towards people, and like, I want to help them, I want to do this and that. But there are certain levels of pain that you have to be willing or aware of what you may be taking on. Because otherwise you can find yourself hurt more than the other person, even at the expense of potentially, like, say you took on a lot of emotional pain to help somebody else, and maybe you helped them, but now you're damaged, or you have a lingering effect. I guess damage isn't really the right word, but you have a lingering effect of the pain. It's like the burn after putting your hand on the stove, that it's kind of like, I got this because I got too close to the fire, kind of a thing.
Wow.
And I think that's what kind of having maybe one traumatic or a handful of those experiences over time is what kind of changes people's ability to cope with, handle, or approach pain. Because if you think about it, especially if you're young and you go through like emotional trauma, like say you had an abusive parent, or you were bullied really bad in school, or you had like bad things happen to you, that could create an aversion to putting yourself in situations. So you're avoiding the pain, but at the meanwhile, your only reason you're avoiding the potential exposure to pain, which may not even be guaranteed, is because you haven't healed from the pain you've already previously received.
It's like an open wound.
Right. So then I think that pain is important to process, especially past pains, because it robs you of the opportunity of living a fuller life, because now you're protecting yourself. You're sheltering away from any potential exposure. It's like if people were in a bad relationship and they never date again, it's like, well, I don't want to get hurt again. But you have to be able to, at certain parts in your life, put yourself in a vulnerable position in order to potentially experience something that's truly wonderful, like a healthy relationship or something lasting, or a family, things like that. But if you're too bottled up from the pain, or you're too worried or still affected by it, that's going to prevent you from moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's really good, and I think even brings me to that was, you said so many good things, but even makes me think of the fact that, because at the end of the day, like, the goal is not to try as hard as you can to live painless, because that's not life. Like, if your goal is to avoid every kind of pain and only have pleasure your entire life, like, I mean, you're gonna have to lock yourself in a room basically and have everybody bring you everything and never go anything, never try anything, because even failure brings a little bit of emotional pain. You know what I mean? So that's not the goal at all. But the goal is to, and cope, I think, is the word that really got me. The goal is to learn from each experience that you get with pain, and actually get stronger in the process. Because here's the thing, like, even as I was talking earlier about some of those people who share their stories and whatnot, some of the things that those people have had to deal with, whether it's loss or trauma or abuse and things like that, those things would have stopped most people or would have broken most people. But I think there's a certain level of almost like resiliency that you build against life as you continue to live, and you build that allows you to have a healthier relationship with pain. I know it sounds wrong, but a relationship with pain in which you can experience it, process it, heal from it, and move on.
Exactly.
Which I think that is the goal, because the goal should never be to avoid it at all costs.
Right.
But when it does come to you, because it will one way or another, whether you don't. You can do all the right things somehow. Life is crazy. People are crazy. Somehow pain is going to get to you. But the thing is, I think, to become the kind of people who can have an encounter with pain and not be completely devastated. You know what I mean? But who can have an encounter with pain and get better from it. You know what I mean? And grow from it. And I think that comes with the resiliency, which comes, obviously from living life and moving forward, but also just from, again, I keep going back to those things, but it really goes for me, like from the kind of people that pour into you and the kind of things that you pour into you, because that helps you build up those muscles that help you deal with the pain when it comes to you. Because that, you said coping, it's such a good, perfect word for that. Because if you try to avoid it, like even when pain comes to you and you try to like deny it as if it didn't happen, like that is so unhealthy, because you end up being that person who has all these open wounds from all these encounters with pain, and becomes so sensitive because it's just open wounds. So anything touches it, and it's devastating. It's too much pain. But when you're able to face it, deal with it, process it, and like actually heal, it becomes a scar, which is way stronger than an open wound, and it prepares you for the next thing and to move forward. So. I think you said it so well and brought so many good things.
So what do you think then are some good ways to cope?
Oh, let's go.
I figured I'd ask you. But what are some examples of ways that you yourself or people, like things that you think people should do for how they can experience and deal with their pain so they can get on with their lives, essentially?
For this one, I'll have to give example from my own life, and one of the things is perspective. I want that help me deal with it. And perspective meaning, usually when things happen to us, I mean, I hope I don't sound too harsh when I say that. I don't mean to sound harsh at all, but usually we tend to make too big a deal of things that make us feel pain. And this is what I mean. I'm gonna give an example of a child and then move on to it all. So a child whose ice cream just falls to the floor and cries like it's the end of the world, in that child's mind, that is the end of the world. Like, the ice cream that I was enjoying right now is on the floor, and I could just die right now. But in reality, you can just go and buy another ice cream and give it to the kid. You know what I mean? Right. And that is at a child's level, but as we get up and we grow up, we don't realize that, but the child in us never really dies. He just evolves, and there's components of that remain a part of who we are. And so then we become adults, and someone says something to you, or something a little offensive or even offensive, and you're completely devastated, when at the end of the day it's just someone else's opinion, and you can just let it go. Right. You know what I mean? Instead of holding to it, it ruins the rest of your year because of what this person said, and then you think about it all the time. You go on social media, you try to get back to them, when in reality you could just let it go. It's not like the words are written on your face, and this is obviously a tiny example, but there's a whole spectrum of things that you can think of in which, when it's us feeling the pain, we tend to blow it out of proportion, because deep inside we connect through self-pity. So like, if I can make myself feel bad enough to a certain level, I feel like I deserve other people to feel bad for me too. True. And a lot of times we just make it bigger than it is, you know what I mean? And so, which is the other side, the flip side of it is perspective. Like, the ability to process what happens to you and to see it for what it is, whether it's just, that was just an insult, that was just someone's perspective, that was that was just an accident, or that was just something that happened. What am I going to do about it? Who can I go to help me? Instead of just getting super emotional. And again, I'm not trying to deny the emotional part of it. Like, I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't cry when you have to, that you shouldn't feel sad when you have to. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, you cannot dwell on it to the point that it becomes your entire life. Because at the end of the day, pain can never be your entire life. It's always a little portion of it. And if you deal with it right and look at it right with the right perspective, usually you can fix it, deal with it, process it, heal, and move forward. But in order for that to happen, you have first to look at it for what it is. And so in my case, or in my experience effect perspective, is something that helps with it. Another thing that helps a lot with pain too, I think, is just the people around you. Because there's some times in which no matter how tough, strong, whatever that you think you are, you will not be able to get in that right perspective and look at that thing that caused you pain the way you should, until someone else is besides you, helping you process them, like reminding you, hey dude, like it's okay, like I'm here for you too, you're not dealing with this alone, let's do this, let's go through this together. And so sometimes, man, like the people in your life will literally save your life, and help you deal with those. And then I think that works for me is God, and just the awareness that when I have pain in my life, I can go to Him, whether it's in prayer or by reading the Word, and knowing and trusting that whatever that thing is happening, at the end of the day, somehow it will all work for my good. It will all make me a better person. It will help me one day help someone else as well. It's not gonna stop me. It's just a moment in my journey, like just that understanding and that trust, in someone who is way more powerful than me, way bigger than me. A lot of time too, I feel like it helps me process with pain. But those are just some of the few ways. How about you? Because I feel like you probably have some different than mine.
Well, I like the perspective part, and I think that's a big part of it, because you've survived up until this point. Even if you're currently in pain with something you're going through or dealing with, you've found a way to be resilient enough to continue on. And it's like I've lost family members, I've lost loved ones, I've had a lot of stuff happen to me in my life, but then I put it in perspective, and it pales in comparison compared to some of the things I've seen other people. And so it's everyone's pain is personal, and because your pain is personal, you have to put your personal pain in perspective. Because if you're looking at your own life, then okay, sure, if one bad thing could happen, and then it's like, all right, like, well, let's go sit over here in the corner now and give you your food and your water, and you don't have to be exposed to any more pain. We'll just take care of you. But it's not the way to live, right? So you've got to look. And I think seeing other people overcoming their pain, because then that gives us hope, and you have, you talked about faith, you talked about perspective. I think another thing is and you talked a bit about resilience, but I think another thing we need to realize is that we have hope, because people have been getting through pain. Society has advanced as far as it has been. Yes, there are problems. Yes, there are injustices. Yes, there are things that people deal with, things that affect large groups of people, that you can categorize them by whatever factors. But the important thing is that we are able to still, despite all the pain, despite the suffering, we can move forward. And so take that hope to the personal level, to be like, okay, there are people who have suffered way more than I, or even if I have, know that there are people that have suffered greatly and that they've overcome it. And you can too. And I think if you look at it that way, it's part of that perspective. It will allow you to be brave, to have the courage to do what you can to grow from your pain.
Wow. Whew. So good. So good. Thank you for sharing that, man. That was good. And I think we're probably wrapping up right now too. And I just, this was very good for me personally. And hopefully for everyone too, because I think anyone at some point hopefully has thought about this, just the relationship that we have with pain, and just what pain can do to people, because pain can turn people into a very ugly people. And in some instances, pain can bring out the most beautiful people, out of a person. So and it has to be in how we interact with it. It can't be that pain is powerful. if they can be to such drastic outcome out of pain, that means pain itself is not powerful. It's the person who deals with it, how they deal with it, which determines where they go. And so hopefully today we're able to lay out some healthier ways, in which we can deal with it. Because no matter what you're going through, no matter what is happening to you, you just have to remind yourself, we all have that, that pain is not that powerful. It's how you're going to deal with it that's going to dictate what this pain eventually will be, and as a part of your story. So hopefully that helps someone. Helps me a ton for sure. So thank you for everything that you shared.
Of course.
And of course. So you guys have a good one. And until the next episode, have a joyful golden week.
See you next time.